without any stop. Start. Be ready. Start. The bill was referred to a joint committee of both the houses. The joint committee went thoroughly in the entire scheme of the bill. After holding several sittings, this bill was amended in certain respects, and the bill as amended by the Joint Committee is now before the House. Many amendments which have been moved, particularly by Shri Srinivas Mishra, were also considered by Joint Committee, but none of them has been incorporated. I will briefly explain why it is so. There is no minute of dissent, and so it can be safely presumed that those honourable members who served on the committee not only agree with the scheme, which is unexceptionable, but also with the details set out in the clauses. Mainly, this bill seeks to achieve the object set out in Article 50 of the Constitution. It is one of the directive principles that the state shall take steps to separate the judiciary from the executive in the public services of the state. While drafting the bill, we have taken most of the provisions from the Punjab Separation of Judicial and Executive Functions Act of 1951. This provides for the classification of the magistracy into judicial magistrates and executive magistrate and investing judicial magistrates with the power of inquiring into and disposing of matters of a non-judicial character. The principle regarding classification has been set about in Clause 5. Clause 3 seeks to amend the Criminal Procedure Code in the manner and to the extent specified in the schedule to the bill. Some new territories were added to Himachal Pradesh by dividing Punjab into Punjab and Haryana. Therefore, certain acts of the former Punjab state were applicable to those parts of Himachal Pradesh. In Class 6, we have tried to repeal those acts so that there is complete uniformity about separation of judiciary from the executive. Our intention is there should be no difference between union territory and another. We have tried to do it by Clause 6. I will now mention some important amendments moved by Shri Mishra. His main anxiety seems to be that none of the judiciary functions should be entrusted to executive officers and vice versa. That is also our viewpoint. He has given amendments regarding the power to take security for keeping the peace under section 107 and for good behavior from vagrants and suspected persons under sections 109 within bracket 4 and 110. He wants all these powers to be entrusted to judicial magistrates. Here his expectation would have the effect of seeing that these powers would remain with the district magistrates, and they will also remain with the judicial magistrates of the first class. But he wants to take away these powers from the executive magistrates of the first class. I would like to submit that these powers are law and order keeping powers. The Planning Commission's review of economic trends has revealed new signs of imbalance in the industrial sector. Investments in the public sector, for instance, have been up to expectations, but the growth rate of production is behind schedule in some cases. In the private sector, new investments have been below expectations. The Reserve Bank recently suggested that industry has no reason to complain either that investable resources are not available in adequate measure or that industrialists are reluctant to put their savings in suitable enterprises. What is lacking is opportunities for safe and profitable investment. Entrepreneurs do not seem eager to take advantage of the funds that investors have to offer. The question has been asked why, in these conditions, public sector enterprises should not absorb the funds which seem to go a Beijing. There is no reason why public sector undertakings should not be thrown upon open to investment by the public, and why employees should not be encouraged to invest their savings in these enterprises. The point has been made that what are called private sector industries are by no means so private. An increasing part of the investments in them comes from public financial institutions. In this sense, the dividing line between public and private sector enterprises is wearing thinner than ever. Public financial institutions are now contributing to public sector as well as private sector projects. Dr. Gadgil has pointed out that the decision to allow public financial institutions to assist public sector projects was taken after the fourth plan had been finalized. It is obviously necessary, therefore, to make sure that the flow of additional funds into public sector enterprises does not disturb plan priorities. Plan priorities, however, do not seem to be firmly fixed. The case of the small car illustrates the fluidity of purpose in the industrial sector. The Planning Commission has till recently been against diversion of resources to a project like the small car, which should be assigned a low place in any rational order of priorities in a developing country. But the government have told the commission that existing automobile producers have not agreed to expand production on any unreasonable terms, and hence it is necessary to examine the feasibility of the small car project in the public sector. This does not answer the question why the small car should be given a higher priority than before, or why existing producers can be compelled to expand their output. Steady growth of industrial production is especially important in relation to the problem of unemployment, and it is a measure of the sense of urgency felt on its various levels that the Planning Commission, the Congress, the Working Committee, and the Reserve Bank should have dealt with it simultaneously. At the meeting of the Planning Commission, the proposal has been put forward for an integrated program of development which would open up employment opportunities for the maximum number of people in each district. The working committee has recently tried to suggest a concrete target stop over